agree with Alan Greenspan, we ought to just eliminate the debt ceiling. Oh, absolutely, we do.
The ability of almost every working American to access more credit than they should have been able to masked the underlying fact that lower and middle class incomes were not rising.
That's not a tenable strategy. Isn't now the time to eliminate it? Oh, it would have been time a long time ago.
Let's put aside terrorism. Let's talk only about our own homegrown animals that are patrolling America right now. So it goes down to the simplest thing. Be prepared, be vigilant.
Folks always feel like they need to be on one side of this issue or the other. We don't even need to bring Black Lives Matter into this. This is a hate crime. Hate doesn't have a color, and culture doesn't have a color. So really, let's address why this happened. This happened because there was some ignorance, and there was some folks that want to sensationalize their message and become Facebook stars. All right, so let's not start promoting hashtags or be on one side of this issue where we have a real opportunity to unify behind this. Yep. And what I'll further say to the viewers is, let's not respond to hate with further hate. Let's not be divided.
Let's not respond to hate with further hate. Let's not be like Missouri. Let's not be like how many other states across the country.
But nationally, Chris.
Yeah, but Dimitri, don't you think at least part of that Black Lives Matter narrative could
and this
somehow
guy, I guess,
part of what happened?
He's tortured, so he has to beat around the bush and say, listen, when things like this happen to blacks, we don't talk about peace for peace or peace against hate. We talk about bottles
the officer was corrected and actually shooting a perpetrator. Don't you think that's... I'm not blaming Black Lives Matter for all the problems, but I think
violence
that they
to equal violence. You talk about eye for eye mentality. People like
as a result of
Louis
that narrative.
Farrakhan come out of the shadows and talk about killing whites. It's a red-handed crime. I covered it already. It's an old story. It's a dead story now. Unfortunately, that's the way the media works. But let's not try to explain it away. The undertone is a very important one. The undertone is a very important one, and we'll move on quickly from this because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But the undertone is that there are people out there who will hurt you because of your skin color. Right? And I know I'm not talking to a white dominant audience. But this affects all of us. There are people in this world looking over their shoulder at you and sneering based on the color of your skin. Still in 2017, it's real. That's what this was about. Let's make no mistake about it. It was about a political leaning. You think that kid who had special needs was that concerned about Donald Trump? I doubt it. It had to do with his skin color. And I'm sorry, but I will not go quietly into a world like this. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. These are small little flare-ups. Because as something like this happens, now, you have to look at the whole picture. You have to understand, as something like this happens, there are all these outlets all over media, all over television, telling you the white man was oppressive. The white man is oppressive. White privilege, white guilt, white this, white that. I said on my show live Wednesday, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And if you want to see that, you got two consequences that you're building on here. If you want to keep up with this idea that the whites are to blame, the whites are to blame, the whites are to blame, the whites are to blame. You can't get it together in your real life. Well, it's because there's a white man who's holding you back. It's because there's a white man that's held generations of your family back. It's because there's a white person who's done this. It's because a white man has done that. Never let anybody have that kind of power over you. If I woke up like that, with this some idea that there was some magic force that held power and dominion over me, and I couldn't be anything, I could be nothing because of the privilege of another race. Do you know what I would be? I would be a nobody. I would be working a 9-to-5 miserable job, probably wouldn't have the woman or the family that I have. But no, I wake up every day unchained, man. I wake up every day unchained. Do you understand what that means? There is nothing hanging on me. There's nothing holding me back. There's no regrets in my system. If I sat here and looked back at my Irish heritage and got filled with anger and hatred about the things that happened, the atrocities that happened to my Irish kin, it's a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea, and it's gotten very old. It's gotten very old, and we're still beating the drum today, and we're creating chaos. The other consequence is that you're emboldening people, and you're giving people a free ticket to go and do some madness like this. The idea that, well, maybe he kind of deserves it. I mean, he is white. He did come here and kill all the Indians, and he came here and enslaved my people, and he did this, and he did that. Well, no, he didn't do any of that. You know nothing about the guy. You know absolutely nothing about the kid. He might not have any blood in him that is anything related to any of that. It's a terrifying thing. And at the same time, me, a white guy, I can get taken to the woodshed about assuming that this person is of that heritage and this person is of that and understand that this person is unique in his way of living, and you shouldn't judge and prejudge and primary judge. I have to eat it all, right? I have to eat it all and understand it. You think that this is going to go on. You're going to create monsters like you've never seen. That's my warning. My warning to you is that you're going to create monsters like you've never seen, and they're not going to have dark skin. They're not going to have dark skin, and they're not going to live in the ghettos of America. No, you keep pushing. Keep pushing people. You keep pushing the majority like this, and I can promise you something more terrifying is going to happen. Something so terrible. Something so terrible. I'm a nice, even-keel guy. I know there's people out there in this world that aren't as even-keel. People out in this world who are going to just be fed up eventually with this madness, this constant barrage on them and their children and everything. You know, when you say white privilege and you say white people did this and white people did that, when you're addressing a Donald Trump who has all kinds of money to hide behind and sit on top of and throw it up in the air and dance around in it, and he's made it, you know, he could care less what you have to say. But there are people in this world who are at the very bottom. They're at the very bottom, and yes, they're white. I know that's hard to believe, but it's very true. There are people in this world who are wallowing, right? They're doing everything they can just to pay the bills and getting taxed, and they get nothing from the government because they make just enough money to be poor, but not enough money to get any help. And these people are desperate, man. They're fighting with their wife. They're fighting with their kids, and all they want to do is raise them right and get them opportunities. And every night they turn the news on and find out what a bad person they are based on the pigmentation or the lineage of their family. And then they look at their children. They say, oh, my God, even after all this hard work, my children are up against it all. They're up against it all. They're already marginalized based on the fact that they're white, and this whole world is on this kick that the white man has ruined everything. And you snap weak-minded people. By doing that, you snap weak-minded people, and then you have monsters like this creature from, where is he, South Carolina. Right? These weak-minded losers come out of the woodwork and do horrible things. Now, if you keep it up, if they keep on attacking and claiming and this and that and white privilege, it's just going to keep happening. The division will grow. I tell you this at least once a month. The idea of white privilege has to disappear. It cannot be so. There's no way you can preach to one race that color shouldn't matter. Color does not define a people. Culture has no color. Meanwhile, in the same breath, telling you that, well, this other color, though, it does matter, and it is different, and it is privileged, and it is a little easier for them. It has to go. It is a mainstream issue that is a mall between the races. If you don't know what a mall is, I'm sorry. But that's what it is. It is driven between the two races right now, and no matter what happens, if this idea that someone with this color skin has it easier than someone with that color skin, you're never going to have unity. You fucks, you're never going to have it. You're never going to have unity. It's impossible. How do we come together? How do we come together over the fact that, well, you got it easier than me. Well, I've got it easier than you. But we're equal. But we're not equal. And that's all I'm going to say on the matter. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. But it's an hysterical one to watch, really. Not in a funny way, but in actual hysteria. An actual insanity. Meanwhile, across the pond, if you will, the UN, John Kerry, Barack Obama, they're all setting up to create the Palestinian estate. We can call it a state or an estate. And this is a war waiting to happen. And I don't know the answer to the question. There is no answer to the question. Unfortunately for those two, it's going to be a war to the end of time. The best they can do is shield themselves from one another. But I can't help but get nervous when I see all the nations of the world point their fingers at Jerusalem. Why? Why do you get nervous when you see something like that, when you see Israel under the gun? I don't know. I'm not a truly religious guy. Not even remotely close, really. But there is something to be said about 1,000-year-old words. There is something to be said about words scrawled on scrolls a long, long time ago. And when I see stories like this and questions without answer, like the Israel-Palestine situation, then I have to turn to those old scrawlings of the doctrine that shall proceed out of the church and of the restoration thereof. One of the last books in the Old Testament, Zecheria. You look at it and you read it, and you tell me if this doesn't sound like exactly what's happening. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided. This is Zechariah 14. In the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses spoiled, and the women defiled. And half of the city shall go into captivity. What do you think is going to happen? What? This doesn't all reading the Bible, you have to come to the conclusion that this doesn't all have to be reality. It doesn't all have to be realistic. It all doesn't have to fall just the way that it says. But it says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. The city shall be taken, and the houses spoiled, and the women defiled. Half of the city shall go into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And then it gets really frightening. Because we know Israel's a nuclear nation. We know Israel's a nuclear nation with their back against the wall all the time. And we know that their leader is a military man with strength and fortitude who won't just allow the Palestinians to flow into their nation, to do things like spoil their houses, defile their women. Now, we know that not all the Palestinians are evil people. We know that. But we also know that they are indoctrinating children every day. They're indoctrinating children every day. They're indoctrinating children every day. They're indoctrinating children every day to kill. Then the Lord shall go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east side. And ye shall flee. And there shall be a great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and the half of the mountain toward the south. Right? What do you get from that? Well, let me read a little. If that doesn't do anything for you, let's go into the real darkness. Let's go into the real darkness and the real terror of Zecheria. When we're thinking about a nuclear nation. And in that day, this is Zechariah 14. In that day, shall there be no clear light but dark. Shall there be no clear light but dark. And I flipped the pages of this beautiful book I have here. And there shall be a day, it is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but about the evening time it shall be light. And in that day shall their waters of life go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the east sea, and half of them toward the uttermost sea. And it shall be both in summer and in winter. And the Lord shall be king over all. Men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. I mean, what do you read in that? But on that day a great tumult of the Lord shall be among them, and everyone shall take the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And Judah shall fight also against Jerusalem, and the arm of all heathens shall be gathered round, about the gold and silver and the great abundance of apparel. That's a good one. But when you talk about these things, man, when you talk about the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all people. You know, you can read this and you could see a plague if you read a Bible and you look at it as words that should be taken completely literally. Or if you look at this existence of ours as I do, which is a cycle. Right? It's a cycle. That's why we study history. Because when we break the cycle, brilliant things happen. And when we get stuck in the cycle, we wind up at war. Right? That's the old adage. It's the old adage. It's very much the old adage of those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh, now listen, their flesh shall consume away, though they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouths. What do you read there? What is that? What do you know about modern technologies? Right? That's an atomic bomb. That's a hydrogen bomb. That's a nuclear weapon. And what I know, it's to some people this is such hullabaloo. It's unbelievable. And sometimes I feel that way myself. I'm going to be honest. But it's hard for me to look at those pages and to watch the news and see the connections so clearly, right? We see the UN. We see all the nations forming against Jerusalem, against Israel. This never-ending battle to create a Palestinian state, and we know how that's going to work out. And when Israel tells these nations go to hell, which they're going to, America's not going to be there to help them. And I can tell you this right now. Israel's not going to fall to Palestinian attack day after day after day. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And when they defend themselves and the world comes for them, right? When the UN comes for them, after they've decided our only option is to defend ourselves against this, well, then they'll defend themselves again. And there will be a day with heavy clouds and thick, you mark my words. If they press this nation into a box, they're not going to go back into the rail cars, I can promise you that. They'd rather go out in a blaze of glory. That's why their women wear machine guns on their backs when they go to the supermarket, because they would rather go out in a blaze of glory than head back to the rail cars. Okay? Just a little bit for you to think about as you watch this world and you choose your sides. Okay, can I tone it down? Let me move the microphone over here a little bit. Can I tone it down a little bit? It's been a rough few shows here. There's been a lot going on. And to be honest with you, I don't know, it's a lot. it's a lot, and we have to be. Oh, look at the Excalibur dehydrator. Very nice model. Very nice model. There's a lot of. Okay, I'm gonna tone it down, and I'd like to get into my own mind for a little while and stop fighting the world's problems for a moment. Okay, can we do that? Can we spend the rest of this time on I Am Liberty just kind of talking, you and I, the way we've developed the relationship from the get-go? You remember the first time we met way back when you were young and beautiful and I was smart and powerful? Do you remember that moment when we locked ears? You locked ears with my voice and you decided that rather than put on Desperate Housewives, you'd watch or listen rather to the I Am Liberty show, and you might even consider purchasing one of my ebooks. You might even consider going on the live chat room and joining me for one. Do you remember when we first met all those years ago? You and I. What fire we had in those days, huh? Can we not have fun? There's snow coming tomorrow. The world's lost their mind. The world has lost their mind, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches. It's the end of the world. I could make crude humor about this, but I don't think I'm going to. But people lose their mind over inches, okay? And it's a funny thing to watch, really. People go out of their mind, they eat food and water and this and that. If you have a base of preparation, you really don't have to worry about much. I got out to this market today, and it was a normal trip, pretty much a normal trip. I wanted to get out there before the maniacs, though. You understand? We normally head out and do some shopping on a Saturday, but we know it's going to be terrifying around here because there's snow coming. There's snow coming, and it's the end of the world. In January. What do we expect? What are we expecting out of this planet? If the snow doesn't come, it's the apocalypse because the world's warming up and the oceans will boil and we'll all be dead in a month. And if it snows, then it's the end of the world because we're going to be trapped in our house with our families for 6 hours straight. You look at each other around the room, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to... I've been looking at a lot of different equipment lately. I have been considering possibly investing in a freeze dryer. They have that great Harvest Right freeze dryer now. No, they're not a sponsor, but it's a good product, and I've been considering it. And I was writing an article today for a client. I also started considering maybe investing in one of those new model composting toilets. I know it's not a sexy topic. I understand that, but since the advent of the tiny house, right? There was a great book. I don't remember who wrote it, but I think it was titled Humanure, and it was all about composting. It was all about compost toilets, right? And how you can compost human waste and create fertilizer, essentially. I read about it in other books as well, but what has really changed the game is this tiny house movement. This tiny house movement has pushed manufacturers to create these tiny little toilets that you can throw in anywhere, and they compost the waste, really. There's no water necessary. They take care of all that, and it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing, and I've been looking at them. It doesn't take much. Water main breaks, yada, 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 this whole thing. And then there's the idea, the whole idea of, because there's always so many avenues in preparedness, which is why we love it, right? And when you talk about survivalism, preppers, preparedness, there's always so many motivations. Because you look at the idea of the compost toilet, and it's kind of icky in a way, right? It's nasty. You don't want to think about it. You just want to flush it and forget about it. But when you think about how much in your life you flush and forget about, maybe not even just metaphorically, right? You see a guy who looks better than you at the gym, you flush it, you forget about it. You see something in your closet you haven't touched in a few years, you flush it and you forget about it. Well, there's consequences to all that. And there's consequences to us flushing our feces into wastewater treatment plants, and all this stuff weighs. And there's serious consequences to it. See, there's always the nagging pull of the total off-grid lifestyle pulling at me. I'm just not ready to move into the thickets yet. I've got children to raise. I'm not ready to go away. I'm sure, give me another 20 years, I'm going to be so tired of society and sick of everything. And I'll be making money, much more money, hopefully, as a writer, that maybe I will disappear into the woods. Leave me alone, I'll write books and sell them to people who care. Other than that, I will be a man in the mountains with a woman who loves him, and probably a couple dogs and some kids that visit, hopefully, once a month. And that could be the end of days for James Walton. I might live my days out more happy than I've ever been, shooting deer, fly fishing in the mountains. You know, it's we can fantasize, can't we? Just because Christmas is over doesn't mean we can't fantasize. Right? Gym tonight. Hit the gym hard tonight. Me and the rest of the state of Virginia. Everyone's in the gyms now. Everyone. Oh, good news. I forgot. So, I moved my entire Libsyn archive of all the shows I've ever done on Libsyn, all the shows I've ever done, probably from about, I don't know, whenever I made the jump to doing this thing the right way. I want to say 2013, 2014. From 2014 on, I pushed all of the shows from Libsyn to YouTube. So now you can go to YouTube and you can listen to all of the shows. I mean, there's got to be 40 shows, at least, maybe more. All available at my YouTube channel, I Am Liberty Show. Okay, so you got to get out there. You got to check that. So cool. I didn't even know I could do it. I did it by accident. I was walking through my son's school the other day while he was trying out for a play, and I seen them, boom, brrr, all of them lined up in my YouTube page. This is great, perfect, wonderful. Let's move on. So go check them out if you want to listen to the archives very easily. They're all available at YouTube now. I'll probably be posting some more things on YouTube as well. I'd like to get into some videos. I do a lot of stuff, you know. Sometimes I just like doing this stuff. You understand what I mean? I do a lot of stuff, but I don't want to videotape a lot of stuff. But then again, I do feel like there's a nagging desire for people to see what it is I pull off here in this little lot in the city. Because I'm just barely in the city limits, and I feel like a lot of the YouTube channels out there are homesteads. You know what I mean? Everybody wants a homestead. Of course, we all want to have this big piece of land with goats and cow, the whole nine. Well, maybe not everybody, but we don't. The vast majority of us don't. We found that out, not long ago. The vast majority of people are living in cities. Duh. And they need what I have and what I do and the ways that I work the process. Because they're helpful to people, and that's what it is. That's what it is at the end of the day. So, where am I going? I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk for a little bit. I didn't want to look at the internet, right? Turn the screens off. Talk about the archives. Talk about what's coming. I just started working on a community preparedness book that I'm going to give my everything. Sometimes you write books, you don't give your everything. This book here, I'm going to give my everything. I'm going to get it published. It's going to be my first published book by a legitimate publisher other than James Walton or I Am Liberty Publishing, which has been the main publisher of all my works. But this is going to get everything. This is going to be the manual for you guys who want to go to the next level. If you want to go to the next level in preparedness, right, and get out of the mindset that you've got enough food stored for you, enough water for you, enough ammo to protect it, and a bunker that I'm going to live in for 6 months and eat my family inside of. If you want to get out of that mindset and get into a world where Americans can really coexist and love life, you have to get into the preparing your neighborhood. Community preparedness, communicating. Right, you need a community-wide communication method. You need a community garden, or maybe several. You need a community watch and some level of security. You need a lot of things, right? You need a lot of things, and we're going to discuss them all in my new book. I don't have a title. I just did the outline not long ago, and I'm going to give it everything, guys. Every little quote, every little thing that I hold dear to myself, everything that makes me me, I'm going to pump into this book. Because I want it to be a meaningful book. I want it to be a powerful book. And what I've come to realize in writing and in creativity in and of itself I don't know that there's a middle ground in creativity. I really don't. I don't think that there's a middle ground. I think if you're a creative person, then you're always a creative person and you'll always create. Right? If you're a person who comes up with these brilliant ideas or these great ideas or whatever it is, you're always going to. So what I'm teaching myself now is to not hold back. Not hold back. Empty it out. You know, it's almost like it's like emptying out a clip or something along those lines in a gun. You know, you don't need to hold any ammo back for something coming. You dump everything into your writing. You dump it all in there, and before you know it, there's new things growing anyway. There's new things growing. I wake up with a million ideas. I never even accomplish half of them because I'm not putting myself into everything, and that's what's going to happen. That's the sea change that's happening in my writing right now. Whether it's a piece of writing for me or a piece of writing for someone else, I'm not going to live in a world of, I like that idea, I'm going to keep that for no. There's none of that. It's give it all. Give it all to everything you do. Give it all to everything you do. That's the way to live. Trust me, the waters won't run dry so long as you keep inspiration in your life. You have to keep motivation and inspiration in your life. You got to keep working. You got to watch. You got to read. You got to listen. You got to think. All of that stuff. And the ideas will keep coming. And people may get rich off your ideas. People may make millions off your ideas. But here's the other secret. If you were to make millions, billions, whatever, off of an idea, if you're a truly creative person, if you truly are a creator, you could be sitting on a couch made of money, and you know what you'll be doing? You'll be thinking about another idea, new something. What else can I do? How can I do it better? How can I do this? Inherently, there are workers and creators, and there are other people, and I don't know what they're about, but I can tell you this much about myself. That's what I am. I'm a worker and creator, and that's what I do, and that's what I enjoy. So I'm going to take that to the moon in 2017, and I'm going to drive the ship with that sail set the highest. You understand? I encourage you to do the same. We're running out of years. Every year is another revolution around the world, or around the sun rather. And man, these things come quick and they end quick. And with every year, new things come. Just like with every year, things get left behind or we lose things. We gain things and we lose things. We gain people, we lose people. We gain love and we lose love. We have to live life to its fullest in these days. One of the ways that I do it, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, is through poetry. I like to write it, I like to read it. And forgive me if it's an old and embarrassing thing, right, that only young teenagers do to woo girls in high school or whatever, if they even do that anymore. But what poetry is the philosophy of a generation, right? I have the anthology of 20th century American poetry at my desk right now. And when I read this, I see the philosophers of their time. Right? What was a philosopher? It was someone who didn't have that outlet. And this is the problem. Our philosophers today are stand-up comedians. That's it. We'll look back and we'll recognize, just like I look back and I see poets of the 20th century, 19th century, and I say, oh, these were the philosophers of their day. These people were the people who looked a little deeper than the average person at life. And they had an audience at the time, which is why there are books about them. Well, the poet is dead. The poet has been assassinated, right? Because he felt too much and he didn't include enough foul language into his writing. So he got marginalized, right? The poet has been marginalized. No longer the philosopher of our time. Instead, the philosophers of our time, again, are stand-up comedians. The clowns. The jesters have turned into the philosophers. And that's the world that we live in today. You can't get around it. They have the mind and the hearts of the youth. And they speak on the issues of life, right? The deeper issues of life. And they make you laugh and they make you think. And for that, I guess we should thank them, but I don't know. They have their place in society. I have nothing against stand-up comedy, stand-up comedian. Watching it my whole life, laughing. It has a lot to do with my own humor today. But I like my philosophy to come from poets. That's what I like. I don't like my philosophy to come from Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? I want to have good, hearty belly laughs over what he has to say, but I don't want him to be the person I look to figure out how to live my life. Or the profound ideas or the prophetic ideas of the day. So, that being said, that's my little tirade. Every once in a while I have to talk about art and I have to talk about poetry, and you have to live with that. Well, you don't have to live with it. You don't have to live with it, but you do if you want to listen to I Am Liberty. So, the show is coming to a close here. I've told you about the archive on YouTube. Get involved with that. That's a big one. That's a big and very exciting one. And as I close the show, I'm going to read to you from Edna St. Vincent Millay, a Rockland, Maine poet. She went to Vassar College and lived in New York City. Wrote several books on poetry. Pulitzer Prize winner, the whole 9 yards. Make bright the arrows. But the one I'm going to read to you is called First Fig, and it's 4 lines. And that's the power of a great poet, a great writer, because you can do things so succinctly. And I can close out a show with this poem titled First Fig because it so succinctly explains life, and my life in particular, and also a life that you should strive for if you're not already living it. So Edna St. Vincent Millay, take me out tonight on the I Am Liberty show with your poem, First Fig. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But ah, my foes, and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light.